In a small riverside town where mornings were slow and evenings were quiet, there lived an old clockmaker named Henry. His shop stood at the corner of a narrow street. The wooden sign above the door read, "Inside the shop." The air always smelled of oil and polished wood. The walls were covered with clocks of every kind. Grandfather clocks stood tall in the corners. Round wall clocks ticked gently. Tiny silver pocket watches rested in glass cases. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The sound filled the room like soft rain. People from all over town trusted Henry. They said he had magic in his hands. No matter how broken a clock was, Henry could make it breathe again. He fixed time for everyone. But there was one clock he never touched. It sat on a high wooden shelf near the back wall. Dust covered its glass. Its hands never moved. Was frozen at 8:17. That clock belonged to his son. Years ago, Henry's son Daniel had been full of dreams. Daniel wanted to travel to the city. He wanted to study engineering. He wanted to build machines that could change the world. Henry, however, feared the city. It's dangerous. Henry had said, "You are not ready." Daniel disagreed. That morning, the argument grew louder than it should have. Words were spoken in anger. Words that could not be taken back. "Do what you want," Henry had finally said, turning away. Daniel left the house without another word. At exactly 8:17, the clock on the wall ticked loudly as the door closed. That was the last time Henry saw his son alive. On the road to the city, there was an accident. By the afternoon, Henry's world had shattered. After that day, Henry stopped laughing, stopped sitting by the river. He stopped playing music in his shop. But he did not stop working. He repaired every clock that came through his door. When someone brought a broken watch, he fixed it carefully. When an old woman carried in a silent wall clock, he made it tick again. When a child dropped his grandfather's pocket watch, Henry restored it gently. People thanked him. "You saved it," they would say. But Henry never felt proud. Because in his mind, he had failed to save the one time that mattered. He believed if he had spoken more kindly, if he had hugged his son, if he had said, "I'm proud of you," maybe Daniel would have stayed. So Henry made a quiet decision. He would never fix Daniel's clock. It would remain frozen at 8:17, as if time itself had stopped with his son. One autumn afternoon, a teenage girl entered the shop. She wore a school backpack and looked nervous. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. "Can you fix this?" She placed a small silver watch on the counter. Henry examined it carefully. "The spring is broken," he said, "but yes, it can be repaired." While he worked, the girl walked slowly around the shop. She listened to the ticking clocks. She touched the polished wood of a tall grandfather clock. Then her eyes stopped at the silent clock on the shelf. "Why doesn't that one tick?" she asked. Henry did not look up. "It is not meant to," he replied quietly. The girl tilted her head. "Is it too broken?" Henry paused. "No," he said after a moment. "It works. I simply choose not to repair it." The girl looked confused. "But why?" Henry sighed. "Some moments," he said slowly, "are not meant to move again." The girl thought carefully. Then she said something that would change everything. "But if time stops for you, does it stop for the rest of the world?" Henry's hands froze. The ticking of the other clocks suddenly felt louder. The girl picked up her repaired watch and smiled. "Thank you," she said. "My father says time keeps moving whether we are ready or not." Then she laughed, but her words stayed. That evening, Henry closed the shop early. The town was quiet. The river reflected the pale moonlight. Inside the shop, the clocks continued ticking. Tick, tock, tick, tock. All except one. Henry stood on a small wooden stool and carefully lifted Daniel's clock from the shelf. His hands trembled. He had not touched it in years. Dust fell as he carried it to his workbench. For a long time, he simply stared at it. He whispered softly, "I'm sorry." Tears filled his eyes. He realized something painful but true. Keeping the clock broken had not kept his son alive. Freezing the hands had not frozen his grief. Refusing to move forward had only trapped him in one moment. Time had continued. The river had continued. The seasons had continued. Children had grown. Neighbors had aged. Only Henry had remained at 8:17. With slow movements, Henry opened the clock, examined the gears, he cleaned the dust. He adjusted the tiny springs. Tears fell onto the wooden table. "I should have said I loved you," he whispered, but as he worked, something unexpected happened. He began to remember not just the last morning, but all the mornings before it. Daniel laughing by the river. Daniel helping in the shop. Daniel dreaming out loud about the future. His son's life was not only that final argument, it was years of smiles, hopes, and love. And that love deserves to move forward, not stay frozen. Henry placed the final gear into position. He gently wound the key. He stepped back. For a second, nothing happened. Then tick, a soft sound. Then talk. The clock had begun to breathe again. Henry covered his face and cried. But this time, his tears were not only from pain, they were from release. The next morning, sunlight filled the shop. For the first time in years, every clock was ticking, even the one that had once been silent. A customer entered and noticed something different. "You seem lighter today," she said. Henry smiled, a real smile. "Yes," he replied. "Time is moving again." He understood something important. Remembering someone does not mean stopping your life. Guilt does not bring back the past. And love does not live in frozen moments. It lives in how we continue. Sometimes we lock ourselves inside one painful memory. We replay it. We question it. We blame ourselves. We try to stop time because we wish we could change it. But life does not pause for regret. Time keeps moving, and so must we. We can honor the people we love. We can remember them. We can carry their lessons. But we do not have to stay at 8:17 forever. Let time breathe again. Let your heart move, because the greatest way to honor yesterday is to live fully today.